Okay, so today I have Chris Lonsdale again with us, and he is a psychologist and a linguist, and he is a founder of Kung Fu English Learning System. And today I wanted to talk about what Asians, especially Japanese people, face with when they study English. And if I may, I'd like to ask a question first in Japanese, and I will ask the same question in English right after. Okay.First question. アジア人の生徒は、外国語を学んでいるときに外国人と話すことをとても恥ずかしがることが多いと思うのですが、どうしたらその不安を取り除くことができるでしょうか？ So I know a lot of Asian students tend to be very shy when it comes to speaking to foreigners when they're learning a second language. And Chris, do you have any advice to help students overcome this fear of speaking to foreigners?
Okay, well, the first question a learner needs to ask themselves is, what is the worst that could happen? Would the world, if I say something wrong, is the world going to explode? Okay? Am I going to destroy the universe by opening my mouth and trying to say something in English? Okay, and if the answer is no, you need to ask yourself, what are you afraid of? Why are you frightened? And that most people, when they start to really think about that question, they realize, you know what? It's not such a big issue. Okay, so always ask yourself, what is the absolute worst that could happen? And you generally will discover that you're hallucinating about all these terrible things that are going to happen.
Right.
And as soon as you realize that, then you just relax into, that's number one. Number two, don't try and be perfect. Okay? A lot of people make the mistake of trying to have these perfect English phrases with all the grammar and everything correct before they start to talk. And that is a mistake, because even in your mother tongue, you will discover that you don't speak perfectly. You make mistakes, you back up, you try a different way, people don't always understand what you say, they raise their hand and go, hang on, what was that? You try a different way. So you need to be comfortable with the normal interactions that happen when people are talking to each other. And be very comfortable using one word, two words, three words, me, hungry, now eat. Somebody's going to understand, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Right? What they won't understand is when you're sitting there or standing there going, and no sound is coming out, right? Right. They will not understand that, but they're hungry, eat. They will get this. Yep. They will understand this. So I think those two things, just do that, and you'll be able to start interacting.
Okay, great advice. Okay, the next question I have is, 語学を勉強するのに、現地に行って勉強し、その言葉にどっぷり浸かるのはとても効果的だと思いますが、外国に行く必要はあるでしょうか？ So when you learn a second language, I think it's very effective if you can immerse yourself in that language. But do you think it's necessary to go abroad to learn a language?
This idea of immersion, is an interesting one. There's so many examples of people who've moved to another country, Chinese in America, whatever, and they don't speak any English, even if they've been there for 10 years, 20 years. So this is where we get to this idea of distinctions. What do we actually mean by immersion is an important question. That you need to be able to hear the language. That is key. You need to be able to, when you're hearing it, have a way to know what it means. And you can do that from pictures, you can do that from body language. You can do it from context. It depends what level you are. If you're a complete beginner, doing it with pictures is very direct way of doing it. Doing it with a mapping lexical chunk, so you hear mother tongue, you activate your internal representations, then you hear your target. That's a way to do it. You're talking to somebody and they're pointing at things and they're just gesticulating, and you understand from those actions what the meaning is. So you need those two things. You need to be able to hear it a lot, so your brain starts to hear the sounds correctly, and then you need to know what it is that the meaning that's being communicated as you hear the sounds, and put some attention on that. So you can do that in your own country if you have learning materials that are designed for that. You can do that in your own country if you find somebody who wants to be your language parent, who will interact with you over coffee, who will tell you stories, all that sort of stuff. So you don't need to travel overseas, because especially today there are a lot of materials that you can use. Kung Fu English, we developed that for Chinese people to be able to have access to all the materials they need, designed in a structure that is going to support their learning. So as long as you have access to that sort of material, whether or not you're at home or abroad, it's not going to make any real difference.
Great. Okay, the next question. 日本では特に、私が学生だった頃でしたが、英語の発音をうまくすると逆に変な目で見られることがありました。私はそれでも発音をうまくしたいと思って頑張って勉強していたのですが、中国ではそのようなことがありますか？ In Japan, this was when I was a student. When I spoke English with a fairly good accent, other students would look at me like, oh, weird. And I didn't really care about that because I knew the importance of learning correct pronunciations and repeating everything I hear to improve my English accent. But do you have the same kind of culture in China where a student speaks better English than the other students? They will look at the person kind of weird?
In China, I'm not sure. I've not been on the front line in classrooms. But let me tell you a story about a guy who is a French person who wanted to improve his English pronunciation, and he came to me for advice and to help him do that. So I started working with him, and we did about half an hour of work, and I showed him how to use his face differently, how to use his body differently, so he would sound English. And about 30 minutes in, he said, stop. He said, I don't want to feel like this. This feels terrible. I'll keep my French accent.
Wow.
So it's there is definitely a tendency for people to sort of get locked into a pattern. There was an example of a Mandarin speaker in Hong Kong who was sort of trying to speak Cantonese, and his friends would say to him, "Oh, your Cantonese sounds really good," because his Cantonese actually had a really, really heavy Mandarin accent. So there is this sort of tendency to believe that the accent that is being used, even if it's not correct for the target group that you're learning for, is sort of viewed as not a problem. Because people in China, clearly the teachers very often in classes do not have a good English accent, and the students are learning those bad models.
Right.
So that's actually where modern technology helps, because you can have great models in audio and video and work with those models, and then everybody actually improves their level quite significantly to match the target language they want to speak. But you have to sound like the group you want to speak to, not some weird version that group's not going to understand.
Right. You know, that was exactly the case that when I was studying in Japan, a lot of the teachers couldn't even pronounce English words correctly. So I was like, how can we learn proper pronunciation from these teachers?
Exactly. That's a key issue. So yeah, you have to have accurate pronunciation. It is important.
Okay, so next question is、インド人の英語にはインド人のアクセント、そしてシンガポールで、話される英語にはシングリッシュと言われるようなアクセントがあります。日本人でも日本語のアクセントで流暢に英語を話す人もいるのですが、私はそのように英語を話しても何も問題ないと思っていますが、日本人はどちらかというと英語を日本語なまりで話すことをすごく気にします。クリスさんは日本人が日本語なまりの英語で話すことをどう思いますか？ Okay, so Indian people have Indian accent when they speak English, and people from Singapore have a very unique accent which they call Singlish. And I personally think speaking English with Japanese accent is totally okay. And in Japan, there's this stigma of failure if you don't speak perfect English like American or British people. And what do you think about Japanese people speaking English with Japanese accent?
Okay, it's cute. All right. Yes, there are accents all around the world. And in the UK, for instance, there are something like 30 regional accents. So people from different parts of the UK sometimes don't understand each other because of the regional accent. If you're coming from the south of England, from London area, and you go up into Glasgow, in Scotland, and I'll speak like this, and hey, you can't where you're from there. Quite often the people from the south of England are not going to actually understand what the people in Scotland are saying to them. So accent will always to some extent block communication. So for instance, if you're a person who's well traveled and you have met lots of different people who speak different accents, then someone speaking English with a Japanese accent is not going to be a problem for you because you will very quickly understand how their sounds match to the meanings. Right. But if you're a person who's grown up in a monolingual environment and you're only really used to that particular accent, then any accent that is different is going to be hard for you to understand.
Right.
So if your goal is for people to understand you, then ideally you will move your accent into that range that they will understand. Now, for a Chinese person learning English or a Japanese person learning English, all you need to do is to get close enough to sort of what is a global range for recognized English sounds. Even if you have a little bit of an accent, it's not going to be a problem. People are going to understand. So for instance, for you, your English has a tinge of a Japanese accent in it in some places, but it doesn't interfere with communication. Right? If it's very heavy, so that the R's and the L's are not being distinguished very clearly, and that makes a difference for certain meanings, then it interferes with communication. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to put you in jail. But it increases what is known as the cognitive load of the listener. So the listener has to do more processing to understand what you're saying. So again, this is always a continuum. Move from being incomprehensible to being comprehensible, and then move from being comprehensible to being viewed as being local. And the more you play with it, the more you experiment, you explore how to morph the sounds from one to another, then the better you're going to be at getting into target with a new group.
But I see a lot of Japanese students come here to the US, and when they learn English, they start speaking. But in the beginning of their learning stage, when they speak, usually people don't understand them perfectly. So Americans will ask them, what did you say? And then Japanese will be like really shy, and they're like, oh my god, what did I say wrong? They didn't understand me.
They are they're worried about what they said wrong.
Right. So, just like what you said, the listener has to do a little more work when the speaker is not speaking perfect English.
It's not whether or not it's perfect. It's whether or not it is in the range that group understands.
Oh, okay.
Right, so for instance, if you're listening to black people in America speaking the way they speak in the hood, you're not going to necessarily understand everything they're saying.
Right.
Okay, and a white person from California is not going to get everything that a black person from Brooklyn is saying.
Right.
Okay, so when you're in America, if they don't get it, I guess the first thing you need to know how to say is, sorry, I'm just learning English. Okay, my accent is a little bit wrong. Can you help me? Okay, and then, for instance, the person says, what did you mean? What did you say? And if you can write it, you write it down. And show that I mean this.
Right.
And they go, oh, you need to say it this way. So you can use those interactions as a signal. Okay, this person is hearing things in this range and I'm over here. So I need to move my sounds into this range. All right, so you don't need to worry about it. You just need to flexibly handle those miscommunications because it's a natural part of your learning process.
Okay. So, my last question for today is 語学を勉強している方が、しなければいけない一番大事なことは何ですか? So, what is the most important thing that language learners have to do to be fluent in a second language?
Oh, stop translating.
Can you tell us how to do that?
Number one thing is to stop translating. You need to be thinking in the new language. And the way you do that is you go back to real basics. You make sure that your labeling of the world goes directly to internal representations, which I think we talked about last time.
Yes.
That's it. The more you can directly connect the sounds you're hearing to internal representations and then take your internal representations and come straight out into the target language, that will dictate whether or not you can become fluent. If you're always translating, you will never be fluent.
How long do you think that would take for somebody who just started learning English or Chinese?
From complete beginner? It's about 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, as long as you're using the right sort of materials, right? So with the Kung Fu English materials, people just really focus on getting the basics, movements, objects, responding with their body. As long as you focus on that, even for 3 or 4 weeks, you will find, it's automatic, and you can really tell the difference. So for instance, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I just gave an example from our L2B, which is where you hear commands and you respond by obeying the commands, right? And so there was this particular one I just used, which was, show your mother the picture that you made of the cat chasing the dog up the tree. Which you understand, right? Okay. Now, that tells me that you're thinking in English and you're connecting directly to your internal representations based on the English you're hearing. There was a Chinese person whose English was quite good. I said that to her and she's like, what? All right, so that immediately tells you that this person is translating. Because the structuring of the language is different in Chinese and English, so it's a little bit difficult even to translate it fully, and the translation is going to be a little bit clumsy. And if you're doing that, you just can't be fluent. You need to be able to be hearing the sounds, naturally having the imagery and the feelings just happen inside you, and you're understanding the meaning.
Right.
And the only way to get to that outcome is to practice that outcome. That's it, really.
Even like sometimes I wonder, about myself, because when I'm listening to English, I'm not really paying attention, but I'm understanding everything I hear. And just when
Exactly.
you said about the picture and the mother and the tree, it's like as you say it, I can see what's happening.
Exactly.
It's almost like a movie playing in my head.
Exactly. Exactly. That is the only way we understand our mother tongue. Because we're doing that. If we were not doing that, we would not understand our mother tongue.
Yeah.
So the key is with any new language, you need to do that same thing. And that means you need to practice the skill around that. And if you're always relying on your mother tongue for translation, then you're not going to do that, but you're not going to learn anything either.
Very interesting.
But 2-3 months of really focused practice to make sure you're responding with internal representations to the new language, you're going to be fine. Well, they're great questions, and they're actually the questions that have driven a lot of my exploration and research. Right? Because clearly millions of people are having problems around these issues.
Right.
And what is the solution? And so, and that was why I wrote The Third Ear, because I just saw all these people with these problems. So I started to go back over my own experience of learning different languages. I started interviewing, modeling people who were fluent in multiple languages. And what came out was a very consistent view of, if you want to be successful learning a second language, do these things. If you want to fail at learning a second language, do what everyone's been doing for 100 years.
Wow.
Right? And then it was sort of fairly obvious. And then it was a matter of working out ways to express it simply so people get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So that's it, really.
Yep.
And if people really listen to and understand these points and then apply them in their learning, I can guarantee you're going to be fluent in a second, third, fourth language, whichever language you want to learn, and it's not going to take very long.
Right. It gets easier each time.
Easier and easier each time. Because you very quickly realize every single culture in the world talks about food, sleep, work, locations, emotions. You get those things down and you're 60% already. Right. And that takes a couple of weeks. Yeah.
And then from there, you can work your way up.
Exactly.
You can learn whatever you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Great.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and I had a great time, and I got so much more knowledge than before.
Well, thank you. Great questions. As before, I've enjoyed chatting with you on this, and I hope your viewers all get value from this, and it helps them. Yeah, it helps them too. Shift their learning and get the results they're looking for. Yep. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I had a great time again. Brilliant. We'll see you next time. Okay. See you next time. Thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.